Thing is, I was lost, okay? You try it. It's like one of those mazes you get in the gardens of big houses sometimes. Only with the TARDIS, the maze is also the house. Everything's linked by long corridors, and the walls of these corridors look the same. Spotless white walls with rows of these round lights on them. White floors and ceilings, identical doors on both sides at various points. Yeah, every so often you'll find something in the corridor. A straw hat, a broken bit of machinery. Once I found some painting just lying on the floor. It looked well valuable, and I thought I recognised it. But later I saw the picture I thought it was in a book about Van Gogh, and it was a bit different because the man in it had a bandage on his other ear. My room in the TARDIS is close to the console room, and there's this food dispenser thing nearby. That's usually all I need, right? I know what you're thinking, but my room's en suite, so that's not a problem. Although I admit I daren't tell the professor I can't get the shower to work properly. It's got this control panel that would confuse a jumbo jet pilot. I wash myself in the sink and use plenty of deodorant, which is cool because I need the empty cans anyway. Anyway, I was lost. It was my fault because it was night and I didn't want to go to sleep, and I was bored and I'd only just come on board the TARDIS and I wanted to know my way around. I'd had a bit of an explore, and I'd found the laboratory that was like Frankenstein's lab, but with better lights. I didn't tell the professor, because I could tell straight away that I could use it to make nitro, and I didn't want him locking the door. I couldn't always find the laboratory though. I thought I had the way there mapped out, but I must be wrong. Either that or the TARDIS rooms move around when I'm not looking, which I'm not ruling out. So I was looking around and I thought I was with the laboratory. But I kept opening doors and there were all sorts of other things instead. There was a room full of boxes of jigsaw puzzles. There was this room with these big crates in, or that one with the big tree that just seemed to grow out of the floor. Then there were rooms just stuffed full of junk like everyone's attic. Only not everyone's attic has the arms from the Venus de Milo and bits of Apollo moonlanders in it. So that's how I found the zoo. At least that's what I think it was. It looked dead cruel at first because the cages looked really small, but they were like the TARDIS, bigger on the inside. So some of them were only a bit bigger than those boxes you take the cat to the vet in, but you look inside and you can see that there's loads of room in there. I didn't recognise most of the animals. There were mammals, birds and fish, insects and snails and all sorts of stuff that I don't think has names. None of the cages had names on them. Some of them looked well hard. There was this thing that looked like a tiger, but it was a lizard with these huge claws. I wish I knew how the doctor managed to get it into its box. Then there were things with flat bodies, and things that looked like big wasps, and this thing that looked like a walrus. There was this one thing that I did recognise, but had never seen before. It was a dodo. I did a thing on them at school. They came from Mauritius, I remember that, but I don't know where that is. Africa, I think. Anyway, it's an island. And in the 17th century, people discovered it, and they met these birds that were like big turkeys. These were dodos, and they didn't know anything about people, so they came hopping over to say hello. Then the people shot them all. You can guess the moral of the tale, yeah? So what was this dodo doing here? I'm guessing the doctor rescued it. Probably in that cage somewhere was a girl dodo. Or if this one was a girl dodo, it would be a boy dodo. And they'd have chicks. Or perhaps they were both boy dodos, and they were cool with that, and that's the real reason they were extinct. Anyway, this thing looked dead good, and it was a turkey. In an ideal world, I'd have let out that tiger lizard thing, but I could see how that might have caused problems. So I decided to let out the dodo. I found this control on the side of the cage and pressed it, and the top and front sort of folded back. The dodo hopped out and looked around. He looked well happy to be out and started looking all around the room. I stood there and eventually hopped over to me, and I looked into its eye and it looked back. Then the toe rag bit me. Honest, it whacked me with that beak. It really hurt. It got my hand and cut it. "You're meant to be timid and trustful," I shouted at it. The dodo was running towards the door. I tried to stop it, but it swung that beak at me again, and then it was out the door and running down the corridor. I chased it. None of this was my fault, you can see that, right? It was that dodo that did all this. Okay. Anyway, this thing was small, like a turkey. It was whizzing along like Roadrunner. It was dead sneaky too, because once it waited for me round a corner, then ran back past me under my legs. In my school essay I said at the end it was a shame that all the dodos got killed, but now I really wanted to catch this one and make dodo nuggets out of it. Then it jumped down the hole. What hole, you're asking? This hole, right? It was one of those circles in the wall, but there was no light on this one, just this big hole. And it was big enough for me to get down too. I thought about it, and I realised I could always plead innocence if the doctor found this dodo, or its bones, at some point. But then I thought I should catch it in case it harmed itself. So I jumped down the hole too. It was like a water slide, and at first it was well fun, but then it kept going, and I started to worry. The professor said the TARDIS was infinite, so what if this slide thing was like a light year long or something, and I'd still be sliding down at 50,000 years' time? Or what if it was some waste disposal thing and I was about to be diced up? I fell for quite a long time. So long I'd stopped being worried and started being a bit bored. Then I crashed into a pile of old clothes, and I mean a pile. It was like 20 feet high. I think the hole was a laundry chute. The clothes weren't too bad, but they'd been worn. Some of them had been there so long they'd got more dusty waiting to be washed than they probably had been when they'd been put there. And some of the clothes at the bottom were practically fossilised. And there were all sorts of clothes, men's and women's, underwear and fur coats, hats and shoes, scarves and gloves. There was stuff for young girls and old men. There was stuff that was historical and stuff like it was from outer space. I rolled off the pile of clothes. I could hear the dodo in the next room. There was nothing in here but a pile of clothes and the hole in the ceiling, obviously. It's a bit dark and dingy. Next door there was this vast warehouse. Rails and rails and rails and rails of clothing. There wasn't that much light. It was like there were spotlights. I guess there was so the clothes didn't fade, because I doubt the TARDIS worried too much about electricity bills. So I looked around for the dodo, and I could already tell this was going to be tricky. I carried on looking for ages. I was getting a bit tired by now. It was still the middle of the night and I hadn't had any sleep yet. I found a mirror, one of those big full-length ones. Next to it was this weird tan robe and skull cap just lying there on the floor. I thought it could have been a Time Lord gown, because it looked like that. It didn't have the collar thing, but it looked like it was for a priest or a monk or something, but from space. But it couldn't have been the Doctor's. He's like a real shorty, but this was even smaller. I realised it would fit me almost exactly. Now, this isn't like me at all, but I thought I'd try it on. Like, there was a reason I'd ended up down here. I was in my jacket and everything, and the robe wouldn't go on over that. So I took all my clothes off, and not my underwear, you pervert, but everything else. Then I wriggled into this robe. It fit like it was made for me. It was dead dusty, but it was actually quite comfortable. I slipped the skull cap on too. I thought I'd have a look in the mirror, and then I decided I didn't want to. I don't know why, it just seemed the wrong thing to do. But that was stupid, so I looked anyway. And there was this man standing behind me in the reflection. It was like Dracula's cute son or something, all black robes and pale skin. He was about my age. I knew he wasn't really behind me, so I didn't even turn to look. He was really big, like he filled the mirror. I suppose I ought to have been scared, but I don't get scared, okay? So anyone that said I was scared is wrong. I was thinking how I looked like a megafrump in my new brown robes. It occurred to me then that Drac Jr. probably saw me in my bra and knickers. He reached out towards the mirror, and his hand came out of it. I thought the mirror would crack or ripple, but it just came out, like it wasn't a mirror at all, but a door frame. And I felt calm, like I knew all this would happen, like it was strangely familiar, an echo of something from before. "Is he here?" he asked. "Who do you mean?" I said, trying to sound brave. "You know who," he told me. And of course I did. He wasn't talking about the dodo, was he? "He's here," I said, trying to warn him off. but he just smiled. Has he told you about the old time? Oh yeah, the professor's always going on about the old time. Can't shut him up on the subject. Has he talked about me? I shrugged. Well, you ain't Quasimodo. He looked confused. You don't ring a bell? I told him. I don't think he got it. You are a human being, he told me, studying me carefully. Thanks very much. He wasn't exactly paying me a compliment, but I guess in these clothes he might have thought I was a Time Lord for about 3 seconds. You seem full of life. So are you one of those life forms that feeds on life energy then? I asked, still not scared. No. So what are you? I'm not a life form. I was getting a bit fed up of this. If I've learned anything about this old time, it's that people from it can't explain things right, and they never give you a straight answer. So I went for the direct approach and asked, You're not? What are you? The corridors of this ship are so very long. Tell me about it. You should see the laundry chute. Sound bounces from walls. Images are reflected. Given time, these things coalesce. Like an echo. He smiled encouragingly and relaxed a little, like I'd made a connection. Yes, he asserted. I was the original. And then the dodo came bombing through a rack of clothes and launched straight at me. I'd forgotten all about that psycho turkey thing and it caught me off guard. It was an ambush, I'm telling you. I was knocked over, and so was the mirror. I grabbed the dodo. The horrible thing kept fighting and pecking at me, so I grabbed my bomber jacket off the floor and covered it up with it. Then I found this long scarf and tied up the jacket so it was all trussed up. I made sure its head was sticking out, though. It kept squawking at me the whole time and trying to get me. I left it to one side for a moment. I thought the mirror would have shattered, but it hadn't. I set it upright again. There was glass there, it wasn't just a door. But the man wasn't there. I was left alone in this great back cave of a wardrobe. Well, alone except for the dodo. I was already finding it hard to remember exactly what the man had looked like, or what his voice had sounded like. Now I was more worried about changing back into my real clothes, and how I'd get back to the bidder ship I recognised. But later I thought about it. I would have asked the professor, but, you know, it's not like he ever gave a straight answer. That thing was an echo, right? But it could speak and see and hear. No one had been down there in centuries, so it had been alive longer than me or any other human being in a way. Was it another creature the doctor had put in the zoo, like the dodo? Or had it once been an echo, but it had evolved somehow, becoming more and more sophisticated until it was more than a mere echo? Or perhaps, and this only came to me this morning, that's why I'm saying this now, it never said it was the echo, did it? So who's the echo? Think about it, yeah?